Have you been trying to implement the law of assumption, but no matter what you try to do, you're assuming, you put the energy out there and nothing changes? You hear about people using it and yet it doesn't change anything in your life. Well, I'm going to be using my wall back here to explain to you what the law of assumption is in real life terms so you can better understand it, and most importantly, how you can start to use it to get the results and the experiences that you deserve. So let's get started. So here we are on the wall of education, and this is basically just, I put together a couple different maps of consciousness, but basically it's going to start with a lower level. Shame is probably the lowest level you can have, and then I put basically survival, we got abandonment, which has been my realm of experience throughout my life, which is why I know so much about it. Anger, trust, and then this kind of gets higher level vibration. So it's important to understand this because you've got to understand where your desire, right, or your wish fulfilled, where it exists, right, what realm. And this, another way you could think about this is floors on a skyscraper, right? If you're on the second floor, it's going to have its certain set of experiences, the people, the environment, whatever they're doing. So maybe that's abandonment, right? No matter where you go, the theme of that floor is abandonment. So if you want to get a secure, loving relationship and have that feeling of joy, which is where your wish fulfilled is, you'll need to essentially go up to joy, right? And the only reason this is going up is just because of vibration and frequency. It's not because this is better and this is worse. We could easily have these lined up side by side because they're just different areas, different expressions, different realms of experience. So now let's bring in assumptions. So here we are, the old assumption, and you know what happens with assumptions. Anyway, it's really important to understand what your unconscious or your subconscious assumptions are, because so oftentimes what happens is you might have an assumption that you're going to be abandoned. Specifically, if you grew up with a lot of dynamics of not getting your emotional needs met, or people physically or emotionally. And again, abandonment can happen in silence, right? So the person could actually physically be there, maybe it was one of your parents, but emotionally they're unavailable. So even though they're there, emotionally being abandoned, and that happens in silence, you're like, well, I don't know why I have abandonment issues. Nothing ever happened to me. So look in your life right now, if you do have abandonment issues, kind of what the emotional needs were like, or how your emotional needs got met when you were a kid, right? So if your assumption is that I'm going to be abandoned unless I'm somebody else, unless I do this, unless I show up this way, basically your life experiences, your life circumstances are going to be in that realm. Again, you could be thinking of, I assume that I'm worthy, I'm whole and complete, but unconsciously you're assuming you're going to be abandoned. So the biggest thing to look at is not what you're thinking about, not what you're conscious of right now and want it to be, not thinking of it, but really start to do the digging of where unconsciously you're assuming. An assumption is something you give permission or consent to be true. Now, it could very easily have an assumption that shame, right? And shame is a very heavy emotion because it is, I am bad, right? Guilt is different because it's, I did something bad. I can still be a good person, but I did something that was bad, right? Or hurt somebody or whatever. But shame is, I did something and I am bad. Now, in my opinion, this is the birthplace of unworthiness and seeing yourself as no value. And realize there's two different schools when it comes to unworthiness and not feeling valued. There's one group who feels like just inherently, I have nothing to offer. I am unworthy, period. There's another group of people who feel, I think I'm awesome, but I don't think other people can see it. Both people feel like the other person, they have no worth in their eyes. Now, shame often happens, in my opinion, from if we have an experience from our caregivers and we perceived or we were told or shown that they did not value us. We go to connect or we have a need, it's not met. Oh, well, this person knows better than I do, so I must be the problem. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. So you put the insufficiency on yourself, and it leads you to believe you're not good enough when really most likely what happened is the emotional environment was insufficient for you. So you were great the whole time. You were doing everything you could, but the environment around you did not have what you needed. What you needed was not too much. So it's just really, really important that you understand that. Because if you're still assuming unconsciously, again, you could be like, okay, I'm great, I'm going in the world, I've done all these things, I want to manifest that job, and I want to be up here on the realm of joy. Okay, but unconsciously, you're assuming that you're bad. Well, your life circumstances are going to reflect the level of those deep unconscious experiences about shame. So you could be thinking, okay, I assume that I'm worthy. I assume that people can see my worth. I assume that job opportunities come my way and they're easy to get to. Well, that's a lot of energy you're putting out, and affirmations can help you step in to start to try on those new, this new realm of being in. However, if you have these deep unconscious experiences that are associating with shame and you're still giving permission, consent, unconscious to yourself, that's going to be your life circumstance. Now, don't get discouraged here and say, oh God, now I'm just, I'm stuck there. I can't change what happened. No one can change what happened. However, you can change how you see who you were in that experience. Let me say that again. You can change the perspective of who you were in that experience. If you can see, oh, my adult caretakers around me, they were the ones who weren't emotionally mature enough to give me what I needed. They're not bad. They did the best they could. But the limitation was not my worth. It was what they weren't able to provide. That means that you were whole and worthy to receive, but the availability to receive wasn't there. So in that situation, if you can go back and perceive, wow, I was actually good enough the entire time. I didn't realize that people around me didn't have what I needed. So it can change this idea that you're shameful or that you're not worthy and say, hey, hang on a second. And you can start moving up here, right? You might get angry, and that's okay. But you'll move up the levels of consciousness, and that assumption can then be in alignment with joy because you have now the space simply by shifting your perspective, because nothing changed. And this is my opinion on how revision is the most effective, because everything Neville Goddard talked about was about consciousness. When you see yourself differently, when you have a different view of your consciousness, your expressions outside of you, your life circumstances have to reflect it. Now, if I have to change what happened to me so then I feel different, well, then that makes you limited to what happened in your life, right? Or you're constantly chasing this of, that person had to treat me this way. My parents were always great and wonderful to me. Well, really, in my opinion, what that does is suppress, it gaslights your experience, and then you're running, chasing around that everyone had to approve of me, and then that's why I feel good. When you don't give a shit how other people see you, and you give yourself permission, approval, validation, and your value is non-negotiable, it doesn't matter what happens outside of you. It matters how you see yourself. So however you can get there, that's great. But in my opinion, re-reasoning and giving the perspective shift on why you were treated that way and how it had nothing to do with your worth, that was the wounds of other people coming into your experience, can automatically potentially shift your view of your value. So when your assumption at an unconscious, at a physiological level, you believe it to be true that you are worthy, by unhooking that this was actually real for you, it was a misunderstanding because you reasoned on it as a kid, which that's all the tools you had. But when you do that as an adult, you can level up. You can pop right up there. So then that assumption is in the realm of joy, which is then what your life circumstances are going to reflect. How and where you'll find the manifestation, because it's all a manifestation is making visible your beliefs you hold about yourself. Or you could say a manifestation is making visible, is showing in your life experience that which you assume to be true. So when you click in your desire, your wish fulfilled with, in the totality, unconsciously, your true value of yourself at a physiological level, when you know that to be true, that level of consciousness, that level of awareness about your inherent worth, when they align, that's when it manifests. So if you're finding a situation right now, maybe you keep getting abandonment in your life. This is one way you can work backwards. Okay. What experiences, what beliefs do I hold to be true? Well, if I don't show up in this certain way, right, these are where the assumptions come back down. If I don't show up in a certain way, they're going to leave me. Oh my gosh, if I don't look flawless, this person's not going to find me attractive. If I don't go out and do and fix all the problems, or if I don't get them gifts, they're going to leave me. Because you have a past of this, right? And you view yourself as not good enough for that parent to stay or to connect. When really, what do we know? We realize that that parent or that caregiver's emotional capacity was too small for you. They're not bad people, but their emotional, what they had to give was insufficient. You were never the problem. You never lacked worth or value. But your understanding as a kid about the situation was limited. And so you're still living in the confinement of that small-minded limitation. So as you go back with an adult and start to think about this, it can absolutely radically change your mind, radically change your life. Because think about it, for all these years you've been living off of this value from somebody else. When you update that and realize that how you see yourself and no longer giving the permission and consent, which is an assumption, for it to be true, but you absolutely at a physiological level know that it had nothing to do with you. Not like, oh no, my parents were there the whole time. My parents loved me and they treated me how I did. That's a lot of lying to yourself. And again, if you can use revision that way and it helps, that's good for you. It never worked for me. I felt like I was lying and then I felt worse. I had betrayed myself and then I had this huge abandonment issue. So when I started to just see myself differently, that I was always worthy and my parents are human beings and I love them and I needed more. I needed something different than I got. So that created a wound about my worth. And when I started to see myself differently, I was able to then receive, right? So this is also about your ability to receive that in alignment with the vibration, right? So I assume that I'm good enough to receive peace or joy. And then whatever's in that, on that floor, you'll be able to experience. But if you keep your assumptions down here unconsciously, and you're waiting and expecting and hoping to experience something, that's like being on the second floor, being like, okay, I know they have a coffee machine on the 7th floor, and I'm waiting. It's gonna happen. No, you got to go up to the 7th floor. You're on the 2nd floor. So it's about using your life circumstances now, not as a damnation of like, oh God, I'll never get out of this, but simply as an expression. Oh, okay, I'm not on the right station that I want. What beliefs do I need to let go of so that I can receive new beliefs? And a lot of that, in my personal opinion, is reasoning on the entire creation of the belief in existence, right? And a belief is an idea that you have faith in. And a lot of times our beliefs are things we never look back to even question why they happened in the first place. The more and more you do that, the more and more you cut the cords of shame, survival, abandonment, and you allow yourself to have the totality of your true worth. It's never been in question or been compromised. Simply your idea and your perspective of it has been what's distorted. And the more you start to see and ask and question it, the more you can level up and allow these assumptions to be at the same level as that which the wish fulfilled, the desire that you have. And these desires are important. They're vital for you to fully express in life and to go towards those desires. It helps all of us, right? We're one together. So as you fully express, that joy and vibrancy actually will give to other people. And the more and more all of us do that, we give permission. And another thing too, question, were you taught or was it messaged to you that having what you wanted was selfish? Because if so, look at where that assumption really is. It's down here. I can't have what I really want. I'd be bad. I'm a bad person if I really get to experience what I want. So I can only ever look at it from afar. And that suffering sometimes too can be a sense of martyrdom, especially if you grew up in a religious home. I am suffering and therefore it is part of a greater good. It can go on with different religions, but the more and more you start to really understand, okay, what are my life circumstances? What beliefs would I need to hold about myself? Do I have any experiences like that when I was a kid? If I do, let me go back with all the wisdom, not seeing it through your little kid's eyes, but seeing like you as a big sister, big brother, or mom or dad of little you and being like, hey, what's going on here? right? We're not trying to fight other people, but we're trying to say yes to you. What did you need, and how can you better advocate for that now? And that you've always been worthy and deserving of having your desires. The more and more you understand this, the more and more you understand where your assumptions are, diving in, really unhinging and unhooking and cutting the cords off of any bullshit that's holding you down. It's a misunderstanding, a misconception of yourself. When you get more clear on it, it naturally pops up here. Having these experiences come into your life is a natural expression because you know it to be true, because you understand your true worth. You are deserving and you're worth it. Understanding where your assumptions really are is massive. And this next video right here is going to help you understand how you can use everybody as you pushed out to better understand what realm you are, to reflect back what beliefs you're holding about yourself. I love y'all, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.